This is a white one.
Oh, brown, like, it's a beautiful.
Never mind.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Like what's on my computer when my child uses it. I swear to God.
Good thing we're not live streaming. Your computer.
I'm almost afraid.
Bringing it down. Timmy's going down the street, I must keep the backside or the other side. We'll say, well, there's a puddle, I didn't realize I'll keep the puddle on. I never saw it, I didn't go to the station, it was out there. It's absolutely so fun. Oh, I heard you laugh.
I probably get a little too
I
much
told him,
fun out of that.
I was the stage there, and he's gonna. Uncomfortable. And that floor that comes on is just mud.
Jess, I just assumed we didn't have utilities yesterday.
Yes, the next Monday for the holiday. I'll send out the packet here. Yeah. I'll send it out hopefully tomorrow.
Best thing about masks.
I know.
There you go, that's what no take break times up on bridge. Those are new. Okay. I haven't driven up there. So I was hoping. I wonder.
Could it be down for?
I don't know.
You know, I didn't know this was just over yesterday.
Yeah. I don't know. With my look. Not this year. No. Back up and get over. Tony, are they still open? Do they have the bridge done this year?
I heard this summer,
Okay.
but not quite sure.
Been a lot of comments on it. Something last week about it.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't hear it all right.
Really?
Yeah, those big condos on flat.
Did you go to the ceremonies?
Yesterday morning.
Yeah.
What was that?
Good. Okay. Yeah, I missed that.
How's your trip, Jeff?
Pretty good.
Where'd you go?
Relaxing?
Oh, nice.
dog wouldn't let us leave him alone.
So you didn't get to try the really great food in Ely?
No, take out, didn't take everything.
Oh.
Actually, COVID really affected everything up there. I mean, between the fires and the COVID.
Yeah.
There was, places were closed down, didn't have the staff.
We're just in.
So some called venture in right now. We're waiting for.
Burnside, not just the post.
Oh, Chad, I was talking to Chad maybe something that. Yeah, yeah, the same reason.
No.
I'm gonna get blasted by the sun.
Yeah, you are. It's gonna get worse the later it gets here. We're the ones in the splash pad, I might just hear.
Nice to see that it can stay open beyond the pool closing season.
Especially when you have one of those hot.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, that's on Friday,
The ball field is gonna be packed.
They got, how many do they have?
I'm not sure.
They only have some 10, I don't think it's probably
Hey, Brian, that,
Oh, the other Sunday that they do, but I think it's on Saturday. They do a sawdust scramble for the kids with money in it. It's crazy. Crazy busy. So
What's the sawdust scramble?
So they put all these critters in all this money in a big old pile of sawdust, and then they make it like by different kids' age ranges.
That sounds fun.
They can come over there with like 25, 30 bucks a quarter. They're crazy. All right, I was gonna say. Yes.
Really good. Okay.
How do you know?
Do you want to take roll?
Sure.
He was suggesting that. But he's got to come over for it.
We've got 2 audience members on YouTube right now.
all right, cool, thank you.
All right, we are at 7 o'clock. And I'll call to order the September 7th meeting of the Wabasha City Council, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Dean had suggested we take roll, which I think is a great idea. We'll have Jess call us for roll.
Moyer,
Yes.
Falcon,
Present.
Walrick,
Here.
Durant,
Here.
Woodley,
Here.
Sella,
Present.
Freemeyer.
Here.
And we haven't, and no members of council on the Zoom call today. All right, and I don't think we have any guest speakers unless we have somebody online that would like to give a signal that they'd like to make a comment for council. Seen any?
See one person, but I don't see that they're indicating they want to speak. 9 here. None here. None.
Okay, very good. All right, so we'll move on. Changes or additions to the agenda. I had wanted to add, well, first of all, a little correction that was funny in my, in the online version of the agenda, you'll see number 7 is blank. That's Caroline's administrator report. I had also wished to add for council's consideration, Corey Leffler, who's a banker at WNB, who has been encouraged and is willing to serve the Wabasha Port Authority. And I sent out his short bio. He's in branch of the Winona National Bank. Has 2 small kids. He and his wife live in Wabasha in the Eagle Valley Basin, and he has come highly recommended by a few people. So I look forward to that. We can place that under general business 3. Any other changes or additions? Hearing none. My difficult week for our community in losing a child. Addie Simon passed away on Tuesday night, and our EMS, fire, and police, of course, were all involved in responding to the scene and the subsequent investigation. Addie's known to many. I don't know her personally, but I recognize her beautiful face from our community. Like a lot of kids who aren't, if they're not your own children's age, you don't know them well, but many do, including some of our first responders. So our just deepest sympathies to their family, and her service is tomorrow from 4 to 7 at the funeral home at Abbott. And as I understand it, I think there's a vigil following under the bridge, which is hosted by her dance team sisters. So that is a really awful thing to happen. Never leaves that pain of something like that never leaves a community. And an honorary recognition of another tragedy, but a wonderful story in terms of a homecoming of the Lloyd Tim reception of his casket and his family, bringing that to the funeral home on Thursday. It was really lovely. Thanks to the fire department. They brought the ladder truck out with the beautiful big American flag, and it was really moving. I know that some people weren't able to make that because the time moved around a little bit, and Captain Gallenberger was, as commander, was trying to keep everybody in the loop, but they were at the mercy of the Navy's schedule. And so that was really lovely. And I think others went to I went to that, and I think others went to other parts of the recognition and dedication of the park, which looks beautiful. It's wonderful. I mean, Kellogg has done a beautiful job with that. And if I'll welcome anybody else to make comment there too. We are in just sort of regular city business. We are attempting to get on a bonding tour. The Great Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities put out a notice that cities with projects that are requesting bond funds should make requests. The Senate's Capital Investment Committee will be doing the tours of southeastern Minnesota in October, and then the House Committee in November. At least that's how it was outlined by the coalition. So we've officially made that request to the chair. And they have placed us on the roster, I guess, of those being considered. That's really all I have. We'll do committee reports, and I welcome other, comments just related to some of the events. I should give a shout out to the city of Kellogg, which will put on some marvelous watermelon festival activities this starting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's always really wonderfully hosted. But from the committees, I heard you say you don't have utilities until coming.
Correct.
Okay. Streets. Tony, do you want to give us a streets and parks update?
Evening, Mayor, council members. The park board met last month. We had some requests that Councilman Ware had brought up, so we went through a few of those, seeing what we could take care of, what we could plan for the future. We had a request from a couple campers that they wanted to swap sites between the two, and that's not how the program works, so we're kind of going through a process there. We finished up Popcorn Park plan review and then the Eagle Basin plan review. So basically that entire package is done. And we're gonna do citizen input now, so we can add that to the whole mix. And there's gonna be some surveys coming out on that too, so any needs or wants from the public will be included in that. And then I believe the comp plan will be updated as well. That was it for Park Board. Street Commission met today. We talked about the 2022 truck. Price is $205,000. So we went through line by line, explained the different things on the truck. Because we got one price for the truck chassis and we got one for the plow equipment. And then there's some other details coming online from a grant also, but when we moved that, they approved the truck. Of course, that'll be maybe coming to council in the next meeting or two. And then crack filling project, we talked about leftover funds sitting around $13,000. And so we'd like to get some crack filling touched up on the mill and overlays that were done over the past few years. And we got, I met with a salesperson. We went through 3 different maps, and basically it's going to be 24,000 to finish everything. So we're looking at doing a portion of that this year and another portion next year. And then they were pretty concerned about the budget talk about cuts. So they sent a motion to the city council. Says at the monthly street commission meeting held today, Tuesday, September 7th, a request from the street commission members that motion city council to cease any further budget cuts to the public works department. Motion was made by James Mathias, seconded by J. Jewson. All but one member was present. They're concerned about the loss of staff, if raises are affected, and then future projects as far as crack filling, patching, seal coating. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you. Tony.
Yes.
Yeah.
So did the park board talk about, I read somewhere that they had one time discussed the property that runs between the city and Lawrence Boulevard, between the river and Lawrence Boulevard. There's a lot of people putting improvements on it. So it's restricting some people's use.
We haven't heard anything negative about it, but we do have a process, and maybe Wendy knows a little bit more about it, but if they're gonna put something down there, they have to fill out an application and sign over that we're not liable for damages, you know, with the river and things, but it's getting more and more. So, I think what maybe you're talking about like access to the river, that one little spot off the end of the bridge.
Well, there's a whole lot. Everything is public property from the Oxnard subdivision up to the Eagle Center.
And people are going,
It's the same thing as public property. So people are putting improvements on it, which, you can kind of understand that, but I've also heard them asking people that went down there to fish, saying you can't fish here.
that's going to be an issue that's going to come up sooner or later.
Yeah.
Whether it's next month or, because it was, that little bit was talked about, it's not as if they own that, but they feel that they own it.
Yes.
The city right away goes to the edge of the water.
Yeah.
Except when you get down, the lower Main Street past that last alley.
That certainly happened in Western Lawrence. I'm currently down there. Everybody down there knows that it's public land. So I don't know if you're talking about East Lawrence.
There was somebody who wanted to use that little ramp, kind of down the block from your mom. That little ramp that goes down to the water, and they were told to get out of there, it's private property. And we kept that there, so there was a little access, canoes or kayaks and different things, but.
So, yeah, so I was there, and basically, I think either they wanted it maybe as a future council discussion item, the lack of access to the river, or maybe strong consideration in the park strategic plan as to how are we going to provide more access to the river, because it started because that surfaced as a top issue in the Main Street survey, lack of access to the river. So we started discussing, well, what is lack of access to the river? And then the view of the Parks Department is that too many property owners are claiming that as private property and people don't know it's public. And so I think, I don't know what the solutions are, but we talked about more public dedicated space along the river. And I think Darren gave the example of more areas on the river where someone feels encouraged to utilize a space, go fishing. So, yeah.
The one thing we talked about is a new dock, you know, that's gonna be posted, you know, city dock, public use. And that might help encourage people to stop there and come up to the businesses. That was one request we had from a downtown business owner. So that's one thing, but, and then we gotta decide, is it streets or is it parks, or is it both? Because it's right away to the street, but you know, is it a park project or issue?
City property, public property.
Thanks, Tony. Let's see, Port Authority, John.
Port Authority did not meet in August, although Caroline and I did go to Minnesota Port Association's meeting. Caroline, were you gonna talk about that a little bit or not in your report?
I hadn't planned on it.
Okay, I'll just touch base on it real
Yeah.
quick. So the Port Authority was invited to attend, and they invited us also to join the Minnesota Port Association. And that consists of Winona, Red Wing, St. Paul, and Duluth. We would be the fifth in that group. Those are the only Mississippi River publicly owned ports. This group does a lot of work with respect to lobbying. It also does a lot of work in kind of collaboration with how to manage certain materials. The number one is dredge materials. There's a lot of discussion. They're excited about the fact that we had dredge materials, and they had a lot of opportunity to offer us a lot of suggestions on how they utilize it, certainly like in the St. Paul district. So I think it was fruitful. It'll be a agenda topic for the Port Authority in September. That was it.
Thank you. Thanks for going. Planning Commission.
Planning did not meet. Likely will not meet next week either.
Okay. All right, and am I missing any commissions? No. All right, I don't think there's anything substantive from the HPC. I guess I can always, we're required to participate in training to maintain our certified local government status, and Wendy's gonna be able to do that. I appreciate that. It's the commitment to travel is not with us. We've got online training opportunities, which is a good thing, but it's still a commitment of time. Any other reports, good news, otherwise? Anybody want to share anything about the other Lloyd Tim events? It sounds like they were really well done. Our dedication looked beautiful. I saw photos online. If nothing further, then we'll have Caroline's administrative report.
Okay. Well, August has definitely been the month of the annual budget. And then Tyler and I think in the months of June and July submitted several grant applications, and we found out we were successfully awarded grants. I think one of them you know about, the $107,000 for HVAC improvements. I've had a lot of businesses ask me about this, and we have to do lots of policies and procedures and an environmental review. So I'm anticipating releasing a program in December, which is consistent with what we heard from businesses, is they don't really have time to think about this till the middle of winter. And then we received $10,000 from the Southeastern Minnesota Initiative to fund an ambulance assessment and business analysis, and approximately $114,000 from the USDA Rural Development Agency to fund 35% of our two major capital expenses, which are the snowplow and the police car. And then Tony and I were talking that maybe the actual equipment costs are going to come in lower, and so it will only be 35% of our actual costs. thanks to the help of a group of us, we've reached a tentative agreement with the police union on a 3-year contract. The formal agreement is being revised and will be presented at a future meeting. The dollar amounts agreed have been included in this budget. And thank you, Jeff and Brian, for your help with that. And then I just mentioned what Mayor Durand had already mentioned. And then we're very excited to offer an employee assistance program. Thank you to our leadership of our city clerk. Staff, volunteers, and their families will now have easy and free access to mental health counseling services. It's free, confidential. They will offer an appointment within 1 to 3 days. And it was just very timely with the type of work that we do. And we've had a number of requests from staff about mental health concerns. So we were excited to offer this benefit. And again, it's available to staff, volunteers, and their families. And thank you, Wendy, for your leadership on that. That's it.
That's great. I really appreciate you finding that. I think Tim and I both went to sessions when we were newly elected officials about the importance of mental health for everyone, and especially in our emergency response areas, you know, that their access is really important. So EAPs are awesome. I enjoyed having one in my own employment. It's really a great thing. We have a very straightforward consent agenda. I think we've got our 2022 county highway maintenance agreement, the September warrants, our August 3rd council minutes, and our August 16th special council minutes, which was our budget workshop, the cable franchise agreement renewal, and a item related to putting the Saturn View that the police have no further use for to auction. Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move. I'll second.
We have a motion from Tim, and I heard a chorus, but I heard Brian better since he's close to me. We have a second from Brian. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda carries. No public hearing tonight. General business is, of course, our Eagle Center leases and agreements. So this is a big one we've been waiting for, but I think everyone feels pretty acquainted with it since we've seen it in stages and really in its almost final state at our last meeting. So we have our resolution, and walk me through this, Caroline. Do we is the resolution sufficient for approval of all these documents, or do we need to actually in our resolution? But do we need to? How do we need to act? Maybe Mike wants to weigh in on that.
Mike.
If you adopt the resolution, that will authorize the clerk and mayor to sign the documents. And then the terms of the resolution as I drafted it will also allow minor changes to the documents as determined by the city administrator. And I can go over what those would likely be right now, but there won't be many changes. This is almost very, very close to final form.
So why don't you do that, Mike? If you want to review changes that may occur, and then members of council can develop any questions they still have.
Sure. So after the last meeting, we sent these documents, after the work session, I should say, we sent these documents to the state, to Roger Behrens, who's the lawyer that works at Minnesota Management and Budget. And he's not the boss, he's not the commissioner or the deputy commissioner, but he's the top attorney there. And we sent those documents to him for a preview so that he would preview them and tell us things that were wrong, so that we didn't get into a situation where we approved them, submitted them to the state, and then had to do it again because they weren't done correctly, or there might have been, one or a handful of problems or something like that. So he took quite a long time to get back. It took him over a week. So we were waiting for those documents. When he sent them back, there were a number of changes which I'd made and incorporated into these drafts. And the Eagle Center and myself didn't object to his required changes. An example, I'm not going to go through them all. Most of them were almost typographical in nature, or changing the way a statute was referenced, or things like that were really not worth bringing to your attention. A couple of the ones that were somewhat substantive, although I don't think they were worth fighting about or arguing over, was on the maintenance and use of the amphitheater section. For example, in that section, he required, MMB allows, generally will not allow sublease of the space without their approval, but they do allow kind of an exception to that for very short-term subleases. So for example, if you were going to lease the, an office in the Eagle Center main building out to somebody else for a full year, that would have to be approved by Minnesota Management and Budget. But if you're going to lease the amphitheater out for 2 hours or 4 hours, that's allowable without their approval on each individual sublease, which would pretty much make it impossible to do that if they required that. However, one of the caveats that he incorporated into this draft was that we have to develop a lease or rental form, and then that form has to be approved by Minnesota Management and Budget. So in that section, we added 2 sentences that basically reference the fact that the Eagle Center and city will develop a form and won't sublease the property pursuant to that section until that form is approved by the state. And things like that really aren't negotiable. I mean, when he says that has to be in the agreement, there's not much for me or the Eagle Center attorneys to say about that. That pretty much means it's got to be in the agreement. So there was a couple of things like that. Most of them were typographical, the way a statute was written. And a lot of his comments or questions had to do with a misinterpretation he had about the project not being split. When he saw a ground lease, he thought the ground lease applied to everything. He didn't understand, even though we did 2 separate checklists and I labeled them correctly. And I've talked to him about this project a number of times. He didn't fully understand that. So a lot of his questions related to that ownership interest issue about lease versus ownership. And once I explained that to him, that really took away most of it, a lot of his questions. And then his comment after that was, we're very close to having it approved in final form. So there's 2 things that specifically are outstanding that I can think of. And one is section 19 of the Main Street Properties document. And that document has to do with renting out spaces within those buildings. And it has to do with those 2 residential leases I think you're familiar with. But currently there's 3 leases at those properties, 1 commercial lease for the Chamber of Commerce, and then there's 2 residential leases. I don't even know which buildings they're in, but that would violate the rules to have it that way, basically. So what they're going to do is work around that by, I don't really know what they're doing specifically, but generally what they're doing is they're going to create employment for the people who are renting those. And they've cleared that with Roger and MMB that would be acceptable. So there needs to be a few sentences added into that section to accomplish that. And I've asked the Eagle Center to do that because it's their leases. I want them to have a say in what it says. And
Meg's here in case there are questions on that item, Mike. Meg is with us.
So earlier today, a few hours ago, they sent me draft language. I just haven't had time to look at it in context of that agreement. But that's an issue outstanding, but I don't think it's a major issue. I mean, I think it'll be resolved. I mean, it will be resolved. And then before Meg speaks to it, or if she wants to speak to it, the second issue would be the dispersing agreement. That was that contract between the title company, the city, the state of Minnesota, and the Eagle Center. So 4 parties. Oh, and the bank. So that deals with how money is going to be dispersed from the bonding proceeds, how it actually gets, the process that is used to take the money from this that the state has given and disperse it to the Eagle Center. And so we had them review that document. And Roger, that's actually the one document that's reviewed by DEED, the Department of Economic Development. And he said that it wouldn't fly to have a title company do that. It has to be a bank. So we're working with the bank, WMB Financial, and the Eagle Center to redraft that. And that's the Eagle Center attorneys. I incorporated all the comments for the documents that are in the packet. They're going to redo the dispersing agreement. And we talked about it last week. We just don't have it done yet. But I think it's not a major issue because the agreement is going to basically do what the current agreement does. It's just not going to have the title company do the distributions. The title company will still have to run lien searches. So every time you do a distribution, they won't give us money if we put out a mechanics lien against the property. So every time they disperse, they have to do a lien search. So that's why the title company's involved. They'll continue to be involved with that part of it. But the dispersing for the loan, will go through the bank where the Eagle Center's got their loan from, WMB Financial. They have a loan as essentially intermediate financing to spend money on the project that will then be reimbursed. So Meg can talk to that too, but those are the two issues that I know will get resolved very quickly here. They just didn't quite get done for tonight. So I think in terms of the resolution that's before you, the documents, all the documents other than that dispersing agreement, I think you can approve them tonight. And the resolution by its terms gives us the authority, the city administrator, the authority to make minor changes. And anything that we're going to make is a minor change. And I know that because Roger went through the documents thoroughly and redlined them thoroughly. And if there was something that we didn't incorporate in, that would mean Roger missed it or changed his mind about it, which there could be, but I just don't think it will be very much. I trust what he said. Hope you can't hear my dog there. Can you hear my dog?
Well, yes, but that's life.
What are you going to do?
That's life.
I have a
We
6-year-old,
like to talk when we're talking.
a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 12-year-old dog. So this is as quiet as it gets. Yeah. So in any case, I think that'll all get resolved. And I think that the changes to all the documents other than the dispersing agreement will be minor, if at all. They might be in final form. I think the dispersing agreement will change more than minor, but I don't think the changes are going to affect the city's interests. I mean, it's still going to deal with the same topics that are in that agreement. So my theory of that is maybe the council wants to weigh in if they approve the documents, including that document tonight, whether Caroline can have the authority to just approve the changes later on, which I think in that case is appropriate. I wouldn't say that for any other document but that one, because that one, the state is a party to it. The state of Minnesota is a party. They won't approve it unless it's drafted the way that they want it. So that's it. I can take questions if anybody has questions.
Thanks. Any questions for Mike?
Yeah, is it considered a minor change to fill in all the extra blanks that are still in the document, like in section 2.05 of the grant agreement, there's a blank number of years, and the dispersing agreement is full of blanks of dollar amounts. Is it okay for us to approve a contract like this with blanks in them?
Mike's attempting to respond here.
Oh, unmute yourself.
Yeah. So I think those gaps are, let me just pull them up here. And you're specifically referencing the grant agreement?
That's just one of them. There's several of them that, like, there's attachment 3 in the grant agreement has a dollar amount that's blank, and like I said, the dispersing agreement has all sorts of blanks with dollar amounts.
If you give me one moment here. So I've looked through the grant agreement. There are portions of the grant agreement that we don't have the information for at this point, but let me just look at that exhibit specifically as an example.
I can read it. It says this is X, the useful life of the real property and the applicable facility is blank years. I mean, it's trivial.
Yeah. No, yeah. So that Roger reviewed this, didn't have comments on that. That is important. That's not trivial, I don't think. That will have to be filled in, but the useful life is 50 years. Roger's comment about that was, what proof does the architect have that the useful life is calculated to that amount? Because it's not something that I get to decide what the useful life is. That's the architect that designed the project has to give that. And in the pre-design manual summary, they have a statement to that effect. And so I would just tell you this, that one for that particular blank, it'll be 50 years. If it's anything other than 50 years, I think the council's got to reapprove the agreements. But all the other agreements have that calculation already incorporated. All the use agreements do. They have to match the grant agreement. So I will look at that one specifically. I'm just going to look at the other. What was the exhibit, Jeff?
The next one was attachment 3 to the grant agreement. There was a dollar amount that was blank.
Hold on. Attachment 3.
Yeah,
116.
It's sources and uses.
Oh, I see. Sources and
Sources and
uses.
uses, Mike.
Yeah. So that we still need to, the NEC attorneys put this together. Brandy, their attorney, put it together. We need to obtain that. Let me just, if you give me a second, I can maybe give you more. Resolution. Okay, hold on. I just want to make sure that you've got the right document. I'm not 100% sure. Obviously the sources and uses is not something that I'm going to create. It's something they're just.
Meg can speak to that, Mike. She's given us a here.
Yeah, I can
Thanks,
explain that. The sources and uses document is a total funding document that the Eagle Center has to submit to the state. We also have to submit it to the bank in order to accommodate the loan that we're getting. The loan is based on pledge commitments that we have. So what we have submitted already to Roger to review is the various sources and uses to get us to the total project funding, because they will not release any state money until total project funding is committed. We have created that. What we need to do to submit the full sources and uses document is to get resolutions that include the resolution from the city council for support of the project, the resolution from the board of the Eagle Center to take loan funds that are those pledge funds and include those as part of the sources and uses. And then documentation, which we've already submitted, which is all the pledges that we have that exceed the amount in full sources and uses. So it basically lays out where the money is coming from and the specific GMP that it will derive to.
So Meg.
We have that number, but we have it and we've already submitted it for Mike for the state to review.
So are you saying, Meg, that this document is completed? It just wasn't in the draft that's before the council tonight?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, I don't recall seeing it, but I'm not saying that's not.
You haven't seen it because we submitted it right before I left town last week.
Oh, okay.
Early last week, and Brandy hadn't gotten it yet because we were waiting on Roger's feedback about whether or not it was appropriate.
Well, I think Jeff's comment is basically, if you have a draft, even if it's in draft form, that the city council should be reviewing the draft. When at the time that the city council approves the documents, the draft should be in the in the packet. So I think the council can either adopt the documents tonight and delegate that to the city administrator and myself, or not do that, and then bring that pull that one out of the resolution and approve that at a later date. Approve the other documents, but approve that one at a later date. I don't think that's necessary for things like the 50-year useful life calculation, because that's in every other document. That's going to be, it has to be the same in every document. And I don't think this mayor or clerk can sign these documents if it's anything other than that. But I would say 100% confidence that will occur. The only reason that it wouldn't occur is if the state of Minnesota says that's not, we need more proof than what's in the pre-design manual. And I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't know. he pointed that out specifically. So for the sources and uses calculation, yeah, obviously it would be better to have it in the packet today. So I think your choices are to go forward with it and just approve it, subject to the state's approval of the draft agreement, or not do that and require the grant agreement to come back subsequently.
And the implications of delaying approval of the grant agreement, are there implications? If we were to pull that grant agreement from the resolution?
No, I mean, not necessarily. I think so. What's going to happen today, we're not going to mail these to the state tomorrow if you approve the documents tonight. We still have to, I think we've completed the documents that are in the packet, all the use of contracts and the other documents, but I think have to still work out that dispersing agreement, and that could take a week or two. So we can't submit anything to the state until we have that done, and that could still take some time. We want to submit them. I think obviously the Eagle Center and the city would want to submit them as soon as possible, but it's not going to be tomorrow. We're not 100% there. That we're 99% to the completion of it. So the immediate implication is nothing. Whether if you push it off to your October meeting, that might cause you 3 weeks of a delay or 2 weeks of delay of submitting them to the state, depending on when we can get the dispersing agreement finalized. And I don't know how long that's going to take.
Because you're submitting them as a complete packet. Yeah. Okay. So we have that choice. We have the choice, it sounds, to await to approve the grant agreement, but require that the city administrator receive the draft sources and use document and review it for consistency.
Yeah, and approval. I think if they're sending it to MMB for approval and MMB approves that document, I think at that point, that's more evidence that the document, that it's correct or that it's legally sufficient to have them disperse the grant. I think that's, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not going to parse through that document and say, well, I'm not an accountant, and that those things all match up and they're accurate. I mean, I'm going to look at it for what obvious completeness to make sure that it's completed. But that's all I can do. And I think MMB is going to have to approve that anyway. And they haven't yet done that apparently. So that's kind of where we're at.
So it's in play.
And the truth of the matter is there's nothing the city has no real input in
Right.
that sources and use
Right.
at all.
Right.
And it's going to be approved by the state, right?
Yep.
Okay.
We need to acknowledge that it's complete, and you'll give us feedback about the state's response to your draft. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the point, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And Mike and Caroline are going to look at it anyway, right?
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I think the point is, we're not inputting those numbers. I mean, if you look at it, those are things that are going to come from the Eagle Center. What I'm not going to do for you is like vet whether or not those are correct beyond getting a letter from the bank that they have provided the loan that's necessary, that they have approved the loan. And I believe we already have that sufficient evidence that the bank that's, loaning the Eagle Center the money to do the project has dispersed the loan.
Resolution that we're supposed to resolve. How does that?
So the way it's written for us, Craig, is that if we adopt this resolution that's in writing, that we would be,
What page are you on?
if you go back to the
61.
agenda item. Oh, you're in the grant agreement?
No, I'm in
Packet?
the city of the resolution on the PDF, it's page 60.
Oh, yeah, you're on the PDF. So I'm just going into it as a link. So yeah, so in the agenda item, the
This is the top
the first link is our resolution. So we can go through it. It's recognizing that where the city received a general obligation bond from the state of Minnesota, the amount of $8 million for the renovation expansion of the National Eagle Center and the renovation of the area surrounding. We have the legal authority to receive financial assistance, institutional, managerial, and financial capability to ensure adequate project administration. We previously contracted with Eagle Watch, which is the Eagle Center, to operate and maintain the current existing Eagle Center facilities on behalf of the city. The city and Eagle Watch desire to enter into agreements to allow Eagle Watch to design and construct the project subject to city approval, maintain the existing National Eagle Center facilities for an initial lease term of 25 years, subject to oversight by the city. Whereas Eagle Watch is entirely responsible for funding any portions of the project in excess of the state funding received by the city, who is the legal sponsor of the project and has obtained financing sufficient for such funding. That's what this sources and use document is about. Whereas city staff has negotiated a series of agreements with Eagle Watch, which are the ones that we have before us, including the grant agreement, the ground lease for the National Eagle Center, the lease and use agreement for the main NEC facility, and the lease and use agreement for the Main Street properties. And this dispersing agreement, which Mike has educated us about, which needs to have a shift from the title company doing the dispersing to the bank doing the dispersing. And recognition, non-disturbance and an allotment agreement. And whereas the documents referenced in the resolution must be approved by the state, which is why the sources and use is with the state right now for that feedback, that the city shall act as the legal sponsor of the National Eagle Center projects as referenced in the relevant state legislation. Eagle Watch shall be contracted with the city to construct the project improvements. I think I just went beyond, yeah, okay. Subject to the terms of the lease. And Eagle Watch shall be contracted with the city to operate and maintain the Eagle Center facilities for an initial period of 25 years. I feel like I'm reading the same thing over and over again. I maybe did. So then we have before us these documents, the grant agreement, which we were just discussing, which has a sources and use section that is to be completed and is currently with the state for preliminary review of a draft. The ground lease, which sounds like has no substantive changes expected. The lease and use agreement for the main facility, no substantive changes expected. Lease and use agreement for the Main Street properties, and the dispersing agreement, which may have some changes. So we would be giving Caroline the authorization to make minor or technical changes to these contract documents, but they would otherwise be approved by this resolution. Anything significantly impacting the financial contributions to the project would require further council action.
I move to adopt.
Thanks, John. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. We have a first from John Friedmeier, second from Jeff Sulla. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Lots and lots of work, right?
Can I just recommend that we get the final copy that gets submitted?
Should,
Yeah.
yeah,
We
yep,
usually don't always get that.
yep, that sounds good.
Can I also make a comment?
Yes.
So this document was 204 pages long of legalese. A lot of it is repetitious. I think the description of the property is repeated several times. Can we just, we've all got other jobs and things to do. Can we get a executive summary of this thing before we plow through 204 pages of legal documents? I mean, I know that's more work, but it's better than having 7 people plow through 204 pages.
I guess I saw Mike's memo as sort of that summary, prior to the workshop. That's how I was able to digest it. I read Mike's memo first, so I kind of knew what I was looking at. So that was very helpful to me. And nothing substantive changed since that memo outlining the.
It's also, I'm thinking this is a matter of procedure. We've had, in the last few months, we've had packets that are in excess of hundreds of pages. And that's a lot of stuff to plow through, and if it's a lot of it was like, some of it was the cable agreement with a lot of documents that we're not really interested in. All we really need is an executive summary. This is what we're doing with so much it costs. We recommend this, blah, blah, blah. It wouldn't take a whole lot. Otherwise, I'm reading through these documents going, what are we approving? And I have to go through all those pages, and I think this is not relevant, this is not relevant, this is not relevant. So I think if we're going to be an efficient city council, we need to have some streamlining on these large documents. So that's my comment.
Sure thing. I was satisfied by the memo. I found Mike's memo sufficient in that regard. I mean, I think you got to be conscious of how you're digesting the packet. If there's a memo, read it first. If there's a letter from Caroline, read it first. If there's an update in her administrator's report that gives you the nugget that you're looking for, read that first. But contracts are boring. We have to go through we have to do both. We have to digest the summary, we have to digest the details, because we're responsible for both.
No,
Yeah.
I think that point's well, yeah, I think that point's well taken. I mean, it's hard to read that much, and that's why I did the memo. You know, we could have done it in a different form. Sometimes there's things called a term sheet. A term sheet's basically a summary of the, you know, not in prose, but it's just a kind of line by line, like value of the contract, you know, term of the contract, where it's just got those terms in one sentence or one line at a time. You can do that for your contracts. And if you did a cable franchise agreement, I'm familiar with those agreements. I mean, that's, you know, our firm doesn't handle those agreements. We have special franchise attorneys do that because they, you know, it's very complicated. I mean, those are very, very complicated documents. So I understand that. I was hoping the memo would accomplish that. It might not have been perfect, but yeah, that's all I can say about it.
All right, anything further on this item? Meg, we had, you know, been positive about the idea of an update, but I think we're sufficiently updated to date. Nothing more can be said at this point. And yeah, go ahead. Caroline had mentioned that, you know, maybe those updates will come in person, maybe they'll come in writings. And to Craig's point, I find written updates really helpful because I find myself referencing them as we, you know, move through projects. So
Instead of Meg attending all of our council meetings, I was gonna recommend just an email monthly update, because we tend to have long agendas. And so I think sometimes people feel rushed if it's at the council meeting. So if everyone's okay with that, we'll just request monthly
That's a
emailed
good idea.
updates. Okay.
and you can digest them, we can digest them at our leisure.
Okay, thank you all.
All right, thank you,
Very
Meg.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
And thank you, Mike.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Sorry about the dog.
That's all right. We've all been there. All right, so now we are at our budget item. I know the agenda by heart. I just can't get back to that item. Here we go. So we have our 2022 preliminary budget levy discussion. And this too comes with a lot of information, but I appreciated how it was outlined. We have a letter that was written by Caroline that I hope everybody read, kind of contextualizing the issue, and I'm sure she'll speak to that. And we have our budget packet, which I assume is it looked to me very familiar from our meeting. We have our preliminary levy, again, our resolution drafted for us tonight. We will have to take action on this because we have to provide the information to the county auditor's office by September 30th. So this discussion needs to get us to that preliminary levy, which, as you recall in the past, we can only go down from that. And then we have this memo outlining budget cuts that have been outlined or suggested either in the budget workshop or since then by members of council, and sort of the implications for some of those cuts. And I welcome Caroline to tee it up or invite department head to comment.
Yeah, so I'll just, the budget workshop packet is familiar, but what you will notice is that it's been reduced by approximately 4 percentage points and since we spoke. So I took some of the suggestions that were, in my opinion, kind of easier cuts to make, and those have been already included in the budget that's before you, which is at a 10 point overall. I think we're at a 10.4%. And so what we did was we did some cuts to administration, like the phone line and some travel costs. We moved legal costs for barge terminal out of the operating budget with an assumption that the Port Authority would pay for those costs, and that would have to come out of their savings. I would say that's somewhat more tenuous, but they have basically agreed that the barge terminal is their project, so they have thus far been paying those costs. Because of the grant that we received, I did eliminate the costs for the ambulance assessment. That grant announcement came through, and I also had a conversation with the Rural Ambulance Service Board, which said that they could provide a better rate than what we were initially quoted, which was $30,000 with the 10,000 grant. They said with the 10,000 grant, they could cover the entire assessment. the library will receive one-time savings from like an accounting error. So when we were going over their budget, they discovered that error. We did make some cuts to engineering costs based on their ability to charge directly to long-term borrowing and projects, and I confirmed that cut with Ryan Malm. We did finalize the union negotiations, and that came in at basically half of what we had originally proposed. Just, I guess, when did we meet? 3 weeks ago? Or, yeah, September 16th or August 16th. And then, oh God, there's a really bad typo in there.
Well, I don't know, we've had a lot of public input that we should be harder on dog food, but I think it means cool. I think it's a cool fee increase.
Sorry. Higher campsite fee increases and higher building inspection fees, pool fee increases are assumed in this budget as well, and that does require future approval. Other ideas which were emailed to the city administrator are outlined below. Do you want me to go through all those emailed or just kind of deal with what's?
I have a question
Okay.
on one thing. I
Okay.
asked on the franchise fees. There's small commercial and industrial demand, which can go up $20 to $40 a month.
Mhm.
And then there's large commercial, which is $82.50, and small interruptible, which is $143.
Mhm.
Do we have, how many businesses or places are in these categories?
What Excel told me on that is those are the businesses that are going to be most highly impacted by this. And they suggested that if you wanted to entertain this, I need to do further work to figure out who they are. They are not allowed to tell me the different categories, but they have some ideas on how we could clue into those businesses that probably would have the most resistance to it. So I did not explore those details because I heard mixed messages from different council members via email in terms of the level of interest of the franchise fees.
Well, I'm
So-
interested in the franchise fees, but
Okay,
I really don't want to boost anybody's gas bill by $143 a month. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, do we have anybody in terms of numbers? Can they tell you that? Do we have anybody in the city that's in that category? And the large commercial industrial, how many businesses are in that category? $82 fee per month.
mhm.
And the small commercial is 20 to 40. I'm not sure when it's 20, 50, and when it's 40.
Okay,
So I just needed some information about, okay,
Okay.
are we going to be imposing these fees? I think the residential, $2 to, whether it's $2 or $1, I think that's not significant. I think that'll go over okay. I think the
Mhm.
small commercial, $2 or $4 a month is, again, is not a really concern, but the other ones
bigger one, okay.
are a concern. How many of those businesses do we actually have in the city?
Okay, well, I apologize if you needed that information today. I do not have it prepared, but I would say in the budget in front of you, it does not assume any franchise fees. It assumes that $150,000 is coming from property taxpayers. So I can definitely get that information as soon as possible. I had a couple council members significantly against the idea, so I just didn't, I wasn't sure,
Well,
yeah.
I think we need to increase revenue somehow.
Okay,
The camper revenues and the boat slip revenues should keep pace with what we, with the way life is going these days. But that's not going to be a significant amount, I don't think. But I think at one time it was $90,000, now it's $70,000.
it's still for a year, we're expecting $90,000. I put in 70 because I didn't know if we would be approving this by December. It's going to be an ordinance change, so that's requiring 2 public hearings. So I assumed 70, assuming that we wouldn't enact it till February. For purposes of discussion, if you want to say, nope, we're going to get this through and we're going to hurry up and try to write it, it just didn't seem like we're ready to go to execute it by January.
seems like the bulk of the revenue too is gonna be collected from the industrial users, because I mean, you know, what,
Mhm.
$60 a year from a residential
Mhm.
isn't gonna, you know, I don't, there's not that many houses, but it's gonna be those are the guys that are gonna be paying, they're the
Mhm.
ones that are gonna be very concerned about this.
Yeah,
If memory serves, I think Excel was able to give us that breakdown.
okay, let me just,
Not names of businesses, but you know, two
You
in
have
the
two, you have four. in
2
this
years,
category.
4 year. And that helped to make those decisions on those impacts.
okay, I just need to, if you wanna continue discussion, I'll see if I can. Jeff, do you remember what I sent you had that kind of data, or if it was more general? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like, I can do that research and bring it back in October. If,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay,
thanks.
good. Yep, and just so we're all clear, when you say these cuts are reflected in the new budget packet,
Mhm.
you have, where did the cuts that are reflected in the new budget packet end in your memo?
just when I stopped reading just
Okay,
now.
great.
Yeah.
So when we get down to page 2, where we're looking at some other,
Other things, those are not in like the franchise fee, that's not included. Right now, it's 150,000 coming out of property taxes is what's in front of me.
it's in the parking lot, these are in the parking lot still.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, okay.
So do you want to just discuss this as presented or go into the other cuts?
So I got 2 documents on potential cuts. One was more recent. One was 9.3, I think one was 9.7. So are you still thinking about those potential cuts?
Well,
They've been inquired about, right?
those are being updated, inquired about. So in terms of the budget, the 10.4, nothing's really changed there. But I was going over my notes of all the inquiries that I've received, so that I can go over, but.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So the inquiries that I've received, one of them was minimal planning services from Bolton and Mink, which means no in-house services, no in-house office time. And I also don't know if that cut perhaps would impact their ability to do a CIP update. But currently, we don't have the in-house office hours. It was something that we discussed would kind of enhance the planner's familiarity, be able to talk to developers, enhance services. That would take off 27,000 as 0.82%.
Is that eliminated completely?
It just does on-demand services. So if someone comes in for a zoning request, they would just charge you by the hour. Harry would not necessarily come in to get to know our community or kind of be here on Thursdays. It would just be having kind of him work remotely. Then there was a suggestion of a cut from the fire department.
Can you go back to that one?
Yeah.
So is that cut the 50,000 to what? Because right now we're proposing 50. You know how much of a cut that would actually be? And I just don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah, I just showed you kind of the.
But we just need to know, because I mean,
Yeah.
it's only a $10,000 cut. It's not that big a deal. It's a $40,000 cut's a whole big deal, which I don't know what the cut is. I guess.
Yeah, it was 50.
Because in the budget, there's 50,000 for contractor fees, which I'm assuming that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, yep, it would be, I'd have to,
They would have cut it in half.
Well, it's a 27.
It says 27.
27,000.
So
$27,000 cut.
Yeah, out of 50.
Are you looking at the second page of
13.
No,
Carolyn's?
I'm just looking at the budget.
Okay, yeah.
in
Yeah,
general.
yeah.
So the
50, the 27 subtracted by 50.
23.
23.
So a handy memo or a handy thing to have up, Tim, is the second page of
Yeah,
Carolyn's
I was
memo with
looking
the
at
yellow.
the
Yeah,
budget.
yeah. I got lost in the total budget, so this is really helpful.
Okay, and then there were some suggestions around cutting fire department radio and equipment. And so the fire department saves for future equipment needs, and Darren's here to talk specifically about that because he was not able to answer those questions. And then it was noted by council members, the large number of radios. Darren, again, can speak to that, but is attempting to outfit every firefighter with a radio. So that would be approximately 10,000. Then the franchise fee, again, I did 70 instead of the full 90, assuming that it would take us some time to do the education. And if you, for example, wanted to lower what larger industrial businesses, we could kind of figure that number out.
Would it be possible to, here you're gonna, if we approve the franchise fee, it would supplement the CIP contribution.
Mm-hmm.
So for this year, I'm thinking, is it possible we cannot supplement the CIP because we're already putting 150,000 in this year? And put the franchise fee into the general revenue?
I think the concern was the CIP long-term, right? Weren't we putting it in the CIP because we hadn't made our,
Yeah, we
hadn't made our allocation.
Yeah, we're putting 150,000 in this year's plan.
Yeah, so this was request to lower the levy, so that's why it supplements that instead of added to, because that's gonna reduce the levy. If you just wanted to add it to bulk up the CIP, we could do that, but.
Well, I thought that's what you were doing here, to supplement CIP
Yep.
contribution.
Yep, so that's lowering the levy, the property
But if
tax
you-
dollars.
You don't supplement the CIP, you just put in the general revenue when that's knocking about 70,000 off potential decreases.
I think you're misinterpreting the use of the word supplement. So instead of all of the CIP, all of the 150 coming from the tax levy, this franchise fee would be, almost would be half of that. So it would be in lieu of all 150 coming from
I
the
think it
tax
works
levy.
the same.
Yeah, it does.
Mhm.
The argument, I think, for some of the council members is knowing that it was designated for the CIP, so we could say, this is going to your future street repavings or equipment versus, I
We don't
think
know how it's gonna get
sometimes
spent.
people feel that makes it more desirable than just supplementing the general operating budget. Even though you're right, I mean.
I think in the
it's not the
future,
same.
yeah, but this year
Yeah.
it seems we're making up on the wages for the workers. Because we skipped last year, we didn't do step increases or COLA. So this year we're doing a little bit larger COLA and we're also catching up on the step increases. So we have some extra payroll fees this year, that's why I think. Yeah, if we could not put that, if we do adopt a franchise fee, we'll not put it towards CIP this year. This year, it seems like we're stretched a little bit.
I think we're stretched for the future. I mean, I think if you recall those diagrams that Mike Lubani put up, we got to keep at that CIP. I mean,
Yeah, we do.
We're going to be in trouble if we don't, so.
Whether or not we're doing the franchise fee, 150 is going in the CIP regardless.
Right.
It's just where's the 150 coming from?
Okay,
Yeah, 150 can go in regardless. I agree with that.
all right, I think it was just as that a marketing, well, I think Councilmember Stella thought that would be a good way to explain it to the public, because it's dedicated to the CIP.
I think it makes sense to put it in
I don't think it makes sense to have franchise fees, but that's a whole other discussion.
Okay,
I mean, you gotta look at the numbers we have here, we can obviously manipulate, but those are 2013 proposed numbers. I would assume they would have to go up because it's 2021 now. And how many, I'm still concerned with, Craig is about what's the number of each one. We don't want to put another tax burden on businesses that some of them are already hurting from COVID. So now we're gonna put another $143 a month on their bill. I mean, that just seems ridiculous. So, I mean, we gotta think hard and fast, because I guarantee you put this fee in, we're not getting rid of it. Ever, right? It just is a fee. That's my opinion, but I would rather see if we could manipulate the budget or find cuts or find more revenue somewhere else other than fees, but that's
I'm
me.
thinking, who has gas only? I can't think of anyone. So I'm thinking there might not be anybody in that 143.
Well, what if there's 10? I mean, I don't know.
I'll give you that data.
That's what we find
That's
out.
important data, yeah.
I
Okay,
know last time there was some there were some businesses that were significantly impacted due to the thought of a franchise fee. So that was really the deciding factor for rescinding it the last time around.
So let's get the numbers and we can go from there.
And then the library offered library book purchase reductions and a program reduction. We had a reduction in emergency preparedness for natural disasters. Again, Darren can speak to that, but that's just, you know, this number can be high or low depending on what's happening in our environment. So it's just, it's a nice dollar amount to be there just in case, but it was suggested as a cut. Then we had Main Street having the Port Authority pay for it or eliminate it. In following up with Mary Fleetcheck, she just noted that this is important that the city have a partnership with them. And so she is not in favor of having the Port Authority pay for it, but we will put that on the next Port Authority agenda. We had a cut proposed for the 2022 fire chief salary increase. The thought of cutting the Chamber of Commerce publication or having the Port Authority pay for it. Again, this would exceed the annual tax levy that the Port Authority receives. So they'd be using one-time savings to cover these costs this year. And then Historic Preservation Commission has about $2,000. Is it for a conference, Wendy?
For our required trainings, which right now we can get for free, but not forever.
Don't you have a $3,000 budget?
That is this budget.
I thought it was 3,000.
Only two.
Well,
And I
so
was
it's 2 and you're cutting it to 0? It was 3, wasn't it? My recollection.
No, because the Main Street fell underneath it for a little bit.
When we were an affiliate, when we were whatever, when we were a lower level membership, the
before
dues for Main Street came from the HBC's budget, yeah. Before it was-
And then the other cut that I had in an earlier version that I administratively removed was a $2,000 further cut to engineering. And just in looking at how much we've spent on engineering costs, I don't want to propose cuts that then we just blow past because, you know, and even to Mike Flaherty's earlier comment, you know, we didn't ask for a cable franchise attorney that specializes it to save $7,000 or whatever that was going to be. So even with our legal costs, we've had a lot this year due to the Eagle Center. And so we again have a conservative amount in there.
Well, some of these cuts are to programs that bring in money. Main Street is one of them. We brought in over $30,000 in the last 3 years and been funded 6,000, 6, and 4, so 16,000. So we more than doubled the amount of money that we got from the city. That has been more than double than what we've given to directly to members of the community. So, and the Chamber of Commerce, the publication, you know, they have to put that out. It's advertising. If you don't put it out, not everybody's going to know that what we have here. And the Historic Preservation Commission, our town is a historic town. So we need to preserve the history if we're going to preserve one of the draws of this town and one of the real attractions of this town. So I'm thinking those are small budgets, and you're taking the whole budget just about and wiping it out. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm looking at some of the bigger budgets that we have. And I hate to say it, but police went up 90,000 from 2021 to 2022. Now, some of these budgets in here are amounting to 15,000 about, well, with the commerce, it's probably 30. I'm sorry to say the public works is the second biggest one in there. Their budget went up significantly. So if you want to make a cut and impact things the least, you cut the bigger things, they can withstand the cut. And it's still not a cut, it's still an increase over 2021. It's just not as much an increase. So if you're trying to make up $30,000, you know, with our bigger staffs, our bigger budget items, that's probably the way you should probably do it in my mind. You probably should take a look at what those departments have got a budget, but they could probably stand for a reduction, a reduced increase. It's not a cut, it's not a reduction, it's a reduced increase.
Then we have to talk about what those cuts or reduced increases mean for services. I think we got to hear what that means. I think our citizens, I mean, that the evidence of the value of the services that the city provides is clear. So we need to be transparent then with residents about what it means.
Absolutely.
We just got to know then what won't happen or won't happen as often.
Yeah,
Because, I get no complaints about we need less of these services. I get lots and lots and lots of requests for more street sweeping, for more, just for more of what we already do. And a lot of encouragement that, hey, we value it, but we'd like to see more of it. So I think,
I know, but we public works for 38 years.
Yeah.
You know what it's like,
Craig,
make the budget work.
with respect to the Main Street and the chamber, it was suggested that the Port Authority take a look at that, to see if we couldn't bring that under our umbrella, because it is kind of that economic development side.
Then you'd have to increase the Port Authority
Well,
allocation, wouldn't you?
the Port Authority needs to have a discussion about it, and I'm not gonna get ahead of what that group will say. Is
And I'm part of it.
there a con, I know, right, so is there a contribution to it, is there a one-time, and we can take that this year? I don't know, and I don't wanna speculate what that conversation is gonna be like until I meet. I support those entities, I think they're important, but I also support police, fire, and ambulance, and this public works.
They're all
So,
necessary.
and it's super necessary, and it's stuff that we don't see every day that makes our town what it is. We can adopt it as it is now, and we have time to work on continuing to reduce. These are bigger numbers that have already been addressed. I think each department can take a close look and probably find a few savings as well. I would argue that having been somewhat intimate in the ambulance budget, there's not a lot of room. There just isn't. Yes, a big budget for the police or fire is, but it's not like there's a choice between having a product and not having a product that you need to use.
having
or
training or not having training,
not
having fuel or
training,
not having
or
fuel.
Tires on the truck or whatever it might be. It's kind of bare bones. So, but I don't disagree that there could be savings somewhere, how we find it, but,
Yeah, I think it is difficult. But these are difficult times. So sometimes we're still moving ahead. We're still increasing the budgets over 2021. So there's more money there. There's more cost to it. I understand that. I'm just saying, let's take a look at it.
I mean, if you look at fire, we know that their calls have gone up.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. Which is nice to know what the call volume is. Same thing with ambulance. Public works, we don't have that ability to see what workload has gone up, because it's mainly unseen. I would be opposed to cutting any of those budgets at all. Because I've gotten, as Tony knows, I got so many calls this summer, and people want things done and all this stuff. They don't want to see them cut, right, and not done. So I just can't. I don't know, in those three firms, I don't know how you would find it. So I mean, I don't know.
So I heard John say, we can, which is exactly right, we can approve this as it stands, so meet our obligation to the auditor and continue to work through this in workshop form or this format, as well as correspondence. But I think what I'm seeing in this second page are some cuts that really don't make a big difference, and they really, they make a big difference to the people who are on the other end of them, but they don't make a lot of difference to our budget. The Main Street program bringing in money is one example, but also doing the things that, that some cities do. So that, that entity is making sure that those pots are on Main Street. They're making sure that there is programmatic activity in our parks and in our library. So, if we didn't fund that and give them the ability to grant make for additional funds, then hopefully we'd see a line item for program in our library, and we'd have to be debating whether we cut that. So I think, we're utilizing the volunteer grant making capacity in Main Street is just a no-brainer. It's just a no-brainer. And it doesn't make that big of a dent. And I think the chamber would really feel blindsided if we were to eliminate that publication budget. They do not have that budget. One of the entities that was basically not met with any aid throughout all of COVID were chambers of commerce when businesses need them most. And ours was open, so it's not like they got to shutter. So that would be we need them here to understand the impact of that cut. So, any further discussion? Do we want to have a motion to adopt this existing? Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, I think, I don't know how we do this straw poll or whatever, but I know there's been some discussion about how we look at the staff wages, the increases, the COLA. And is there a way that we can agree that that's not going to be a part of these? Or do we, is it still on the table for most people or not?
Not for me.
Not for me.
I think they should stay as proposed.
So we have some opposition also we still need to discuss that.
Well, the whole budget, we still have time to pick away at it. We're just preliminary amounts, so we can keep talking about wages till December.
Yeah.
Well, and Santa Claus is coming.
Caroline, you increased the non-police wages 6% essentially, right?
Yep, it's like 4% on the two-step, which I did hear consensus from everyone to just leave the step program alone. But what you did propose, Jeff, as well, was a 0% COLA, and that number is in there of a minus approximately 20,000.
I mean, to me, not to get on y'all mad at me, but a 6% increase, that's out of line with the private sector. It's way out of line. If you go to Mr. Google, he'll tell you that the 2022 average pay raise is going to be 3%.
Yeah, but Mr. Google doesn't do step programs either.
No,
Well,
and it's not the
Oh,
private sector.
I'm sorry, there's a little, you can't compare apples and apples.
Well, you're only getting 3%. You're only getting 3%. Here you're getting 6%. You're getting this 2 steps, and then plus on top of that.
It doesn't make sense to compare ourselves to the private sector. And which part of the private sector? We got to compare ourselves to the municipalities around us, or we will lose employees. And I mean, that is my biggest concern. We need to be mindful of it's the importance of maintaining the professional staff that we have. That I
Our
have.
employees did not have to take 0% cut last
They got a 1.5%
year.
increase last year.
They work.
They got, yeah.
And I think it's important to keep them with the 6%.
Well, I'm just going to point out, the median income in Wabasha is 16% below the median income of all cities that Caroline compared with. So we're not a rich town, okay?
On income,
our
but there's
age,
also wealth.
is there?
Yeah.
We're a high, our age, median age in Wabasha is 48.8. Everybody else is in the 30s. So then we have a lot of retired people here, older people. So let's keep that in mind, when we're giving 6% pay raises when everybody else, I mean, my wife hadn't had a pay raise since October 2019, okay? And just this last week, they found out they're getting a 2% raise going forward.
And that's
Okay.
my point about comparing to the private sector is that's healthcare, as I mentioned, which is in a tailspin. But other sectors are not in that, they're not in that
It's,
position.
it's anecdotal. I mean, Jeff, I know that there are other industries and other companies that have seen a 25% increase in
their
base
wages.
and
Where
cap.
is that?
People I work for,
Oh,
but that's to stay competitive in this region. So I mean,
I'm just,
that was my part of that.
I think 6% is too much.
So
7% was way too much. So at least you got down to 6%.
And I respect that, you know, I mean, I understand what you're trying to say, Jeff, and I think it could be considered, but I also think we need to recognize that they did work with us last year. They did, and we took cuts in a lot of different places, and we held back.
Right.
To try to keep that down.
And it was on the basis of the premise of an economic crisis that we all faced, and no other cities made that decision. So that was a unique move on our part, very unique move on our part.
So now unfortunately it's catch up.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know,
So we have our resolution and it has the total fund amounts. So with only your page 1 memo changes, we have those general fund,
They're right.
debt service, library.
Yeah,
fund.
they're right, proposed pay, Tyler, this is correct, right? One
That, oh,
point,
here, in front of us, yeah.
yeah, so,
Okay, so we could entertain a motion to adopt this resolution setting our,
Caroline just mentioned that that's with the 7% healthcare, if you want to
Yeah.
assume that 10% just to be conservative.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
10.8.
so, 7% was the number given to us by the, agency. If we assume a 10% healthcare increase, worst case scenario, which we will know in September, but we don't have it now. It'd be 10.8%. So this would be the numbers if you assume the 10%.
can you make that big again?
Which, this one?
The one that's on the screen up here.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to be conservative, it may be beneficial to consider the 10%.
Because we don't have
Because
control.
we can't go up from there.
It will go at end of the month. All right,
Yeah,
I make it, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, is that in our packet?
no.
No, this is,
The packet assumes a 7% healthcare increase,
Yeah.
it assumes a 10%.
Sorry,
we talked about this, just,
it's just a 10.4 versus a 10.8. Those are the top level numbers.
Just use the higher one. It's
Exactly.
such a make-believe number at
Right,
this point,
right.
so.
yep. Tim, were you about to make a motion?
Yep, I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. I know this is very difficult work and every single one of these suggestions requires a ton of time on behalf of staff to sleuth out and figure out what it would really mean and whether it's possible. So thank you, everybody. I don't know if, in further workshops, if we'll have the luxury of having department heads or not, but if there's anything else that you wanted to share with us now, I think we would want to hear that, but otherwise we'll workshop this further
Well,
when some more numbers are
Yeah.
in hand.
just a couple final comments. I think I did, at the direction from a couple council members, ask that every department do a 7 to 10% increase. And so the
For decrease in there.
decrease,
Projected.
not an increase, yes. And so I don't know, police department, if you want to comment on that, and even administration, we're 90% salary. So we would require like a mandatory hourly reduction, and I don't see room for that. And same, ambulance service is a 24/7 operation. So again, alternatives would have to be, what are other options to a 24/7 ambulance service? And then with Tony, he took a big budget cut last year and is finding that they can't keep up with the work. But, so I did another scan of the budget to get to 10.8. And so when the department was 90% salaries, the option that I can see is a mandatory hourly reduction, which we're not in necessarily an economic crisis. We're just playing catch up to previous staffing decisions that were made, which is kind of what I was explaining, in my opinion, but.
Agreed. Very good. All right. And we had one item added under general business, and that is the appointment to the Wabasha Port Authority for Corey Leckler. Had lots of good discussion with Corey, with Chad had urged me to reach out to Corey. Brian, I think he's had good reason for Corey to be interested, and Corey himself is interested. So I discussed that with John. Very good. Thanks.
I'll second.
And we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then we have the donations, which somebody accused me of not reading, and I can't remember ever missing that, but for goodness sakes, if I don't read the please stop me if I don't read them. To the library, $20 for the summer reading program in memory of Nancy Kaupa by Mary Hellmuller. $25 also to the library in memory of Sharon Sibilski by Diane and Fred Schulberg. To the fire department and the Relief Association, 19-foot shoreland runabout, $15,000 value, 2019 Can-Am tracks, $22,000, and 2020 16-foot command trailer valued at $28,000. Do we have a motion to approve and accept the donation?
I'll second.
We have a motion from Dean, second from Tim. Any further discussion? All right, we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
First by Dean, second by Tim. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks very much.